Hey there, good afternoon. Sorry about the late start today. I've been thinking through what I need to accomplish and chatting with Copilot to kind of distill what we're going to do or what we're going to start doing in today's session um, to make the edit forms for the DMs familiar a little bit more customizable than we've got. Off screen before I start sharing. I'm getting the server running and all of that stuff so I can show you where I got to yesterday afternoon after that working session completed. And I'm just navigating to its locally hosted URL and logging in. And I'll show you where we're sitting now. And then I'll talk about what I want to do after I've shown that. So I'll share my screen here. And here's our familiar list of non-player characters. And I'm going to go into this edit screen that I've been working on for about the past week and a half. And you can see that I've actually gotten the ability scores listed out here. And I'm pretty happy with that because I can actually make changes and I can reset and then I can redo my change and save it, and it all persists back to the cloud saved model. Now, there is a minor issue in here in that these modifiers, I'm currently calculating them when we roll the stats and storing them with the object. And I think what I need to do here is just make it so that that modifier calculation happens on the fly rather than trying to store it with the actual data itself, because that it seems silly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into NPC Stats 5e right now, and I'm going to change modifier from get and set to something different. I'm still going to have it be a property, but I'm going to make it a read-only property. And what we're going to do is just have set do absolutely nothing and get, for now, instead of return value, well, I'll let that inject here, but it's not actually correct. So what I got to do is I got to go out to my dice bag. I believe it's in the dice bag. Deck simulator, dice bag. Nope, not quite. This is sitting in, that's right, it's sitting in rule sets in the creation engine. Stat builder and stat calculators, ability score modifier calculator. Attribute calculator, blah, 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 blah. Configure inputs, add input, calculate. This is the correct calculation to use. And yes, I'm breaking all kinds of my own architectural rules right now. There we go. That's better. Now, I do need to stop and rebuild and restart the application after making that quick change. Excuse me. Goodness me. All right, so it's building. It's giving itself compiler tantrums, and I'll just re-execute my server process. Refresh the browser. And let's load up our hapless Sealy-Fay cartographer. Let's cancel out of this and we'll go to view. And we can see these are all as they are. I'm going to re-roll his stats real quick. We can see that the modifiers are updating correctly, and let's edit him. Now, I didn't bother putting the modifiers on here before, or I had them on here before, but they weren't recalculating as they changed, and I was getting my brain all tangled up trying to get that to happen. Now, cartographers probably aren't physically very strong, but I'm going to expect that they've got a little bit more dexterity. So I'm just going to adjust those. And int is probably going to be higher than charisma. So I'm going to swap those two. And now we'll save. And we'll come out and we can see that our strength has gone from 10 with a modifier of whatever it was before. It's gone to 0. Dex is at 13 with a modifier of +1, and so on and so forth. So, all right, that works. Now, this UI, it works. It's functional. I can edit the ability scores. I can scroll all the way down to this stuff and edit this, but it's functional, but it's not very good. Like, this would be a pain in the neck to try and use. So I don't like it as much as I would if it actually looked good and looked like an actual designed form. Now, we're not going to be able to go too crazy with this, but I feel like we can add maybe some more custom attributes, or maybe one or two more kinds of custom attributes to the code base changes that we've already made out here in the, let me find them, the engines, but down here in the services and the object services and all of that stuff. I moved the user editable attribute out of the framework and down here into the UI process where it really, I should have put it there to begin with. And now we can start thinking about ways to maybe group these fields as they're discovered. And once we can do that, we can start to do things like put the groups in a certain order, put the fields within each group in, perhaps a relative order. And then we can start playing around with the layout of how the different fields in a particular group might be rendered out to our form as it's being built in memory when we go to edit something. So Copilot and I had a chat before the session, and I asked it, or I told it what I wanted to do, and I asked it what it thought. And it spat out a whole bunch of code stuff, and then I asked it to summarize those steps so that I could, kind of talk through them and think about what it wants to do, and then we can do that. So it's basically, we're going to create a new edit group attribute. We're going to enhance the user editable attribute with a display order property. Now that's going to work for most scenarios. It's not going to work for all of them, especially those game stats, because those are weird. Field group management, groups collection and edit model, ordered field collections, layout configuration per group, hierarchical organization. That one's going to take some doing. Template updates, of course, group aware rendering, layout class application, maintain existing field rendering, flexible group styling, nested property support, blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff. And finally, Copilot asks me, would I like to start with implementing any particular component? Yes, I think the first thing we need to implement is that edit group attribute, but you've proposed a number of features on that I think instead of handling all at once, we should probably do one thing at a time. Let's get the group organization working first. Then, once the fields are being rendered under that organization, we can start adding things like field field order, and then from there we'll iterate towards nirvana. Our MVP, though, is the ability to group these fields together. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to implement this edit group attribute custom thingy. And it wants to apply it to edit group attribute, which doesn't yet exist. So we're going to do it as a new file. I just want to confirm that it's going to the right place. It appears to be. We're going to keep it, and we're going to save it. Let's not apply it to the most complex scenario first. Let's teach our edit model class that edit groups exist. And while we're at it, we'll make sure there's always a default group that will catch any edit fields that do not have a specific group designation. In their attribute metadata. I really wish there was a way for me to say at workspace as the default prompt tag in this. Modify the edit model to support groups with a default fallback. Okay. So, pop open the edit model. I was going to slide this workspace explorer off to the side. And so far, all we've done is A, fix the way ability score modifiers are being done at runtime, and B, added a new attribute class that does not have any, it's not being used anywhere first. I want to checkpoint our code base. So enhance NPC, blah, 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 calculated getter, add edit group for property grouping in UI, commit, sync. Off to the server goes you. There. Now, if Copilot and I screw things up royally while integrating this concept, I've got an easy escape hatch. All right, I want to review what it wants to do here. It's going to add a private const string with a default group name, general, all right, field group, public class field group, name with a list of edit fields. All right. Got a list of field group called groups. Okay. Build fields. Fields equals a new list of edit fields. Properties, instance, get type, get properties. Groups clear. Default group is that. Groups.add default group. Okie dokie. A custom attribute, user editable attribute. If attribute, blah, 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 blah. If the group attribute is, okay. So if the group attribute dot group name resolves to null, we're going to stuff in the default group name. Groovy. Groups first to default, so on and so forth. Okay, that looks reasonable. I'm going to let it apply all of this stuff. Something I'm going to need to keep a close eye on is when it gets into doing things recursively inside something that perhaps, oh no, wait. Okay. All right. Okay, add a field group class to represent groups of fields, create a groups collection, store all field groups, added default group constant. Sure, why not? Suggesting that we update the object editor form to render these groups next. Great, let's clean up the build field method to properly organize fields into groups. You just did that, Copilot. All right. I'm going to let it apply those changes in case it's trying to do something different. Keep, save. Let's update the field rendering loop on the Blazor component next. I should probably open up that Blazor component. I am on later today, C-Films. I have shifted my streaming schedule because I'm going to be, or the past couple of days, I've been spending my mornings working part-time with another developer who's got got a backlog that they're having trouble managing and getting through. They're getting a little bit overwhelmed. So I'm going to be working on a fractional basis with that person in the mornings for the hopefully foreseeable future. Um, and to give myself a little bit of extra time between wrapping up working with them and coming to stream, I've moved my afternoon stream schedule from 1 p.m. Eastern to 2 p.m. Eastern. And of course, today I lost track of time and started even later than that. But other than that, I'm doing okay. How are you? Ah, yeah, it happens. I noticed that Streamlabs and Twitch do tend to have a bit of a delay sometimes. Okay. We're going to modify the object editor form razor template to render fields by group. I think before I apply this, I want to rebuild and rerun and make sure we haven't, and see if we've broken stuff yet. We're probably gonna, but I want to make sure we're not breaking it too badly. All right, run the server. Ugh. Yeah, man. OBS and Streamlabs and all of these streaming solutions, they're not easy. Like they all seem to require a good amount of twiddling. Okay, we are still rendering, and that's good. Excuse me. So let's bring this in, these changes, so that it deals with our groups. And we'll go with the group header for now. Yeah, that works. All right, Copilot, do your thing. And I'm going to stop the server because we're doing some pretty heavy duty changes on the UI code here. Keep, save, rebuild. You know what? I'm just going to rebuild the solution. Ugh. Yeah. I'm using Streamlabs desktop, just the free version. That's what I've been using all along, and actually, my wife recommended it to me because she's done a lot of streaming and a lot of podcast recording and live podcasting and stuff like that. And she was using OBS Studio, but she recommended that I use Streamlabs because I want to be concentrating on code and not twiddling stream control software constantly. All right, so here's update object editors, support groups, boogity boo, blah, blah, blah. Form group container, we've brought that stuff in. Outer loop for groups, nested field rendering inside group containers, group headers. All right, so we should actually get some visible evidence that we are grouping our fields now, even though I haven't applied that attribute to anything yet. So I've rebuilt, re-execute the server. Refresh the browser and bring it on over. And let's hit the old edit button. And here's general. Cool. Everything's in the general group. That'll do for now. Now, something I do want to do on the form group container, form grid, I believe we've got all this stuff down here. Style, form group container, group header. Yeah. I hit my file exploder, open up the CSS. Okay, I see the general group header in the UI. Let's consolidate those CSS styles you added at Workspace, of course, to the Razor file into the scoped CSS file. Then I want to constrain the widths of these groups so that they're aligned with the existing, what's the name of the tag? Guess it's the existing form elements. I think it's that form group CSS class that is controlling all that stuff. Let's take a look. Yeah, I think so. Flex direction gap, form grid with 95%. Don't know that I dig that, but let's see. 100, group header, blah, 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 blah. Let her rip. Come on in. And then I should be able to zap the styles out in the Razor file. Keep, save, spin down here, zap those. Save it some more. Did I do something terrible? No, I did not. It was just freaking out for no reason. Okay, you know the dance. We rebuild because I don't trust hot reload. And restart my server. And refresh the page. Edit. General's still hanging way out here. Let's inspect that element, see what's going on here. It's the header, task host, here's group header, form group container. It is feature host body root. Its width is way too, it's way too wide. Group header, display block, font weight, it also is way too bloody wide. And then I think my form grid, I believe that is what's containing all of those elements. Let's scroll up and see what we're dealing with here. I think we're just nested incorrectly. Yeah. Okay. I see what's happening. We need to move the div class equals form grid so that it surrounds the for each on the edit model.groups loop. Make it so. Let's see if Copilot actually pulls this off or if it screws it up colossally. Because I know this is the kind of thing that I always make a huge, huge mess out of. All right, div class form grid. All right, let's let this apply. And we'll cross our fingers. And I know darn well that this kind of change ain't gonna work if we make it while the app's running. Keep, save. I don't see any angry code. So that's good. Let's rebuild. It looks like it shuffled our elements and enclosures and all the loops and stuff like that appropriately. Form grid, form group, blah bitty blah, blue bitty blue. Groups for each field and group.fields. All right. I think it looks okay. Let's spin it up. Now, I'm also a little curious to see if it's screwed up the referencing and event handling for the change events. With these fields now being tucked inside groups and so on, I'm a little worried that we might have some double instances or have things not rendering from the right memory space or whatever, but we're going to find out. Okay, so I'm just going to play with Eloin here. And Eloin Brightleaf, he started off as Eloin Brightwood, so I'm just going to edit him back. I'm going to save. There we go. We'll back to the list. Okay. And then we'll edit again one more time. Yeah, okay. That seems to have worked. And there's our tag. And here's general. Okay. Looks all right. Let's review the code changes we've made. And from that, we'll figure out how to actually apply this grouping to the different fields on our view models as specified on our view models. I want to take a look at this edit group attribute. It applies to a property or a class, and we give it a name. Made several key changes. Edit model structure. Default group name is general. Form template organization. Single grid container for all groups. Groups as grid items. Fields organized within their groups. Okay. Edit group attribute. Clear details using role. user editable length of career, all of that stuff. Okay. Let's start gradually and work our way up from there. Let's introduce one named group. Two named groups to the townsperson edit townsperson view model. Full name, appearance, and the game stats should go in the upper group. The profession, background, and personality. Background and personality portions can go in a group called narrative details. Basic character information. There, I like that better. Basic character information instead of the upper group. At workspace. Let's not worry about ordering the groups on the form yet. Just want to assign edit fields to an arbitrary collection of groups. So we're not going to mess with the edit group attribute yet. We're going to need our edit townsperson view model. Okay, so edit group, basic character information. And I need parens. What are you complaining about? Oh, duh. There we go. And for personality description, that goes into narrative details. Now, I don't like having these magic strings, especially if they're going to be used for controlling grouping and flow and so on. Okay. Before we start adding the edit group to properties whose user editable specification is buried inside a complex property type, let's take the townsperson for a spin with only the full name and personality description assigned to our new groupings. I'm going to hit stop and I'm going to rebuild because attribute changes absolutely require a recompile before they can be manifested, because attributes are applied to the code at compile time. They can't be reinterpreted while the actual bits are running. All right, we have rebuilt. I'm going to rebuild again because, man, I've got like Dory the little blue fish brain today. My memory is extremely short term for some reason right now. I did take my ADHD meds. I must be having 90 HD today. All right, we'll run. He's spinning. Yeah, man, you know what? You can only bash your head against the silicon wall so long, C-films, before you just got to throw your hands up in the air and say, you know what? I'll figure it out later. And then you go do something else, and sure enough, while you're doing that something else, the sky opens up and everything just kind of falls into place. And here we have our groups. So general's up at the top, basic character information, narrative details, we are grouped. That worked beautifully. Did exactly what I wanted it to do. It's working as expected. Next, I'll set up a pass-through for the character appearance property on the edit townsperson view model. We'll see what effect that has on the form render. I suspect it may not be as straightforward as we'd prefer. All right, here's my edit townsperson view model. I've got full name here. We've got the build name context. Edit group basic character information. Public. Override. Character appearance. I gotta hide this. I need more real estate on my screen here. What the heck are you doing? Let's do this. Pop that onto its own line. Pop this onto its own line. Bop down here. Grab this. Glue you there. Save. Now, I need to take a look at townsperson and make sure. Let's run down to the appearance declaration. You're here, public virtual, appearance. It's a get and a init. Save. Edit group attribute on the complex property may not cascade to its editable fields. Property path construction might need tweaking for grouped nested properties. Okay. I've added the property override on the view model. I'll rebuild and we'll see what happens. Stop. Rebuild. Copilot is suspecting the same things I am. That the edit group attribute isn't going to automatically cascade to any other fields that live inside that complex property. So we've got that, we've rebuilt. Let me start the server. And I'll start the refresh before I drag my browser over here. Let's hit edit and see what we get. There's general detailed appearance. It's still up top. Is it character information? Okay. Build fields recursion. Modify how we detect and apply groups to nesting properties. Yeah. Character appearance is still ending up in our default collection, as we suspected. I think on the build fields method, we should add an optional parameter that carries an override value to use for the default group. As we encounter complex properties that we recurse into, we'll check and see if that property has a group name assigned to it. Pass that as the default group to use when building its field list. Does that seem logical? We'll set the default value of that. Let's take a look at what's coming in here. For default group name to the main class level constant we declared for that. So what I'm proposing to Copilot, and I'm going to let Copilot chew on this idea, and then either say, yes, that's a fantastic idea, or you're crazy. Copilot would never use that kind of language, but essentially my thought is we set up a new parameter on build fields called default group name. We're going to set the default value of this optional parameter to our default group name. And whenever we're working through a frame of build fields in our call stack, whenever that edit group isn't present, we're going to just place whatever field we're dealing with in that scenario into whatever is identified in this default group name parameter. And then as we recurse into complex properties, when we build our prop, this is the check for complex properties here, we will pass the inherited group if we detect one, and if we don't, we're going to pass whatever value has come in as we enter this next frame up on the stack trace in the default group name prop value. It should do what we need it to do. Recursion gets weird. But if you think of your stack trace as a little sticky note that contains, whatever method is currently executing, and if your currently executing method calls another method, you start another sticky note, you write down that stuff, and you put it on top, and then you execute that. And if this method calls another method, you get another sticky note and you put it on top. And then as each of these sticky notes finishes whatever operation it's supposed to do, you take it off and you write the answer on the next sticky note down. And then you take it off and you write it on the next one down until you've unwound that call stack back to wherever it initiated. My little robot gets really excited when I start waving my hands around. And it tends to follow my hands sometimes. All right, I have incorporated Copilot's stuff here. And this is a pretty big logic change. So you know what I got to do. I got to stop the server and I got to rebuild its binaries. And I'll go boopity boo. Save everything. We're rebuilt. Start up the Blazor app server process again. And let's see if we've got any improvement. You'll notice I'm not stepping through the code for these changes. And that's because stepping through a recursive function turns into a frickin' nightmare, man. I'm not going to do that publicly, just because the cognitive load of trying to carry an entire call stack in my head, especially if it's a recursive call stack, it's more than I can reasonably talk through. So here's professional. We've got our stats, our profession description. our background description. We've got our basic character information with full name, detailed appearance, and our narrative details. It has worked. Eureka. Now, yo, that worked. I'm going to set up the other overrides on my townsperson view model. Sweet. All right, I'm going to leave townsperson open because I think I'm going to need it. So let's grab the little itty bitty little scroll bar and come back over to edit townsperson view model. And I want to bring in, whoops, character vocation. What's this complaining about? And I'll go fix this up. Character vocation is not currently marked as a virtual property on the base class. Easy enough to fix up. And I want to bring in background. There we go. And background, it's got the same anger code. So I'm going to save. We're not going to leave these in the basic character info. We're going to move those to narrative details. But let's get these compiler errors fixed first. And this is easy as pie. Virtual. Save. Thing of beauty. Save that. Come back here. And I don't see any more angry code. Got to stop this. And we've got basic character information. Appearances going in there. Because I'm going to need that front and center as my characters encounter this guy. Or as my players encounter this whoever NPC I'm working with. Vocation, this is going in narrative details. And character background, also in narrative details. Now, I'm gonna spin this up, and I want to make sure it works. And then before I get into ordering or working on the order in which these field groups get painted out onto the form, I want to do something about these damn magic strings because they're making my brain itch. Because these are controlling the groupings, and one mistype and my form's going to go all kablooey. It'll still work, it'll just look really dumb. Okay, we're back into the UI. Let's hit edit. Our general, the stats, these are ungrouped so far. Under basic character information, I've got full name and detailed appearance. Narrative details comes next. All right, now let's add one more group, and then we're going to deal with this with this magic string issue that I don't care for. Edit group, basic character information, no. 5E game mechanics. Save it, and I've got to stop and rebuild. Boy, I'm glad the compiler's gotten faster with the newer .NET cores. I can only imagine what it'd be like trying to build this with the old frameworks and stuff. And let me tell you, this M2 processor in my MacBook, it's peppy. I ask it to do some stuff that I expect to take a while, and it's just, okay, boss, here you go. I quite like it. All right, LOM Brightwood, let's edit. There's nothing in general. Basic character information, narrative details, 5e game mechanics. Thing of beauty. Dude, this is working nicely. One minor thing before we carry forward. If a group in the edit models group collection doesn't have any fields in it, let's not even render the group heading. That's going to happen out on the object editor form. Where gegfields.any. That's exactly what is very close to what I thought it'd do. Just a quick little link filter on the group source here in our for each, and that ought to fix this right up. Keepify that. And I'm going to go back to the list. You'll notice that I didn't stop and rebuild and stuff like that, just because I am at my core a hopeless optimist. Yeah, that didn't work. I got to do this. I had hoped against hope that because of this kind of change that we just made, it'd work. But I have a feeling that hot reload, especially when you're manipulating a Blazor component instead of like a top level Blazor page, I feel like the hot reload and edit and continue stuff just doesn't cope well. I feel like the components get compiled into the assembly in a different way from the regular Razor stuff, and my explanation is probably way off base, but I've noticed that the hot reload capability, cancel. Let's rebuild again. Do we introduce an uh-oh? Oh, we sure did. Now create an instance of the abstract typer interface, IEnumerable edit model.field group. Oh, duh. Okay. Where? That's not going to work. There. That should be okay. Save that. Build it again, Sam. Okay, that's better. Now, what I'm going to do is at if group.fields.count equals 0, continue. We'll just add an early escape. if the group has no fields, go to the next group. I'm just going to turn this into a comment there. Save. Let's rebuild one more time. I feel like groups. Okay, that's a list. That's good. All right, that's built. Sorry, I was thinking ahead a little bit. Okay, it's built, it's running. I'm hitting refresh. And let's hit the old edit button. And we have basic character information at the top, narrative details down below, and 5e game mechanics coming in at the very end. I'm pretty happy with this. We have basic grouping, and it's fairly flexible, and I can apply it to complex properties and all of that good stuff. And that is pretty darn sick. I dig it. I dig it a lot. Strength, Dex, Con, Int, Wiz, Charisma. Okay. So these are getting brought in about the order in which they appear in the class file, I think. And that's okay, but I think we can probably iterate on that and make it a little bit better. But I think for today, I need to call this a successful coding session. All right. Hey, Copilot. We're grouping our fields. We're rendering them out to the page. We don't have empty groups anymore, and we can assign groupings to nested properties. I think we've had ourselves a successful stream. Let's see what Copilot has to say. Okay, we've created the ability to organize these edit fields into groups. Awesome. We've got a default group for fallback in case we've got an editable field that we've not assigned. We can handle nested properties. We're filtering out empty groups. We've got clean group headers, and our code structure has maintained very clear separation of concerns. We've not leaked any UI concerns up into our domain or use case layer. And that makes my little architect's heart happy. And we're processing our fields very efficiently. Next steps, we're going to order the way, or we're going to give ourselves the ability to control what order these groups appear on the form. We're going to implement the order in which the fields in a group are rendered. And maybe we'll do some layout customization. And maybe some enhanced group styling. We'll see. I think I want to do the ordering first, and then definitely the layout customization. There are a few things that I want to do, that I want to change, especially around the ability scores and shorter fields. or fields that don't take like paragraphs. Um, but yeah, we're we're getting to a pretty sweet spot here, I think. And today was super duper productive and successful. So I thank you for hanging out. Hopefully, you got to see a little bit about how I use reflection and some recursion and some custom attributes to decorate class properties with metadata to assist in that recursion and reflection, letting me build a super flexible domain object editing system. And of course, applying it all within the DM's familiar, which is going to make it an even more useful utility for my users once I start attracting them. So until Monday afternoon, I hope you all have a great weekend. Try and go do something fun and be careful, be kind to yourselves, and happy coding. Take care, friends.